In this video, I'm going to talk a bit about understanding your curves and understanding how to look at your curves to really understand what they're doing and how they're affecting the animation of a character. So I'm going to use Albert R. Guthrie, who is the bad guy from my student film Heavenly Appeals, and I'm going to start off with his left-hand controller, which I've already put some keys onto. On the Translate Y channel, I set a key at frame 0 at a value of 0, frame 3 at a value of 3, and frame 6 at a value of about 3.5. And I just want to illustrate that the steeper a curve is, the faster it's changing, the faster it's moving. So over these first 3 frames, 1, 2, 3, it's got to cover this much distance or this much value change, so it's kind of a steep curve. And over the next 3 frames, 1, 2, 3, it's only got to cover 0.5 change in distance. So it really doesn't have to move very far, so the curve is going at a shallower angle. And that's a pretty basic principle, but very important to understand, and it applies to all your curves. The steeper it is, the faster the value is changing. And now I'll go down to Albert's foot and click on this, and I'm going to focus on the Translate X and Y channels. And I will show infinity, because he's got a cycle on it, and I'll play it through, and his foot's going back and forth just in this straight line like that. And that is because the Translate X and the Translate Y are changing direction on the same frame. So when it's going to the right in X, it's also going down in Y. And then on this frame, it changes direction. And now it's going to the left in X and up in Y. So it's just doing this back and forth. If I offset this X channel, then if I play through, it's going in a counterclockwise kind of circular archy motion. And that's because now, when it's going down in Y, it's still going to the right in X, but then here in Y it turns around and it starts going back up, but it's still going to the right for 2 frames. So it's going down and to the right, and then it starts going up, but it's still going to the right, and then when I keep going, it's going to turn around in X and start going left. So it's doing this sort of thing, and it gives you a circular motion or an arc. And that's just an idea of how you can pay attention to your curves and look at them to try to understand how one curve is related to another curve and how that relationship affects the animation of a character. So if you're not terribly familiar with these sorts of relationships and what they do, I just recommend doing some practice drills, like get a sphere or a character's foot, whatever you want, and just do this sort of thing and play with the curves and try to understand how they're relating to one another, and familiarize yourself with how the relationships create different circular arcs or overlap if the Translate Y is going up and down and there's a Rotate X on it. Offset the Rotate X to get different overlaps and stuff like that. So that's just a recommendation. And now I'm going to do a different sort of a practice drill, which I think will be a lot of fun. I'm going to attempt to high-speed parallel park this Geometro into this parking space using only the curves. And I'm going to put the grid back on because I need these units. And I'll get started. I'm going to give myself some more frames. I'm going to bring this back to start on frame 1. I'll set a key. And I know my end position, I want to be right here. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It looks like 7.5 forward in X, so positive 7.5. So I'll set a key and look at the X. I'll change this to 7.5. And I need it to go over 1, 2, 3.5 in Z, and it's going against the Z arrow, so that's a negative value. So Z negative 3.5, and okay, so now he's in here, and I need him to turn around 180 degrees in Y, so that's rotate Y. I'll put in 180. And now he's flipped around. So now what I got to do is put in some breakdowns, because I don't want it to be rotating evenly and slowly from here to here. I want most of the rotation to happen just at the end. So I'll use this tool and drop a key in here, and I'll give it a little bit of rotate because I want it to be slowly turning in that direction, and then near the end I want it to spin quickly. So I'll put that there, and then I know with the translate Z, same sort of thing. I want a lot of it to happen closer to the end, so I guess I'll press play and see what happens. Okay, so it's not perfect, but since I have an understanding of what these curves mean and what they do to the character, I was able to get the character to do pretty much what I wanted just by using the curves. And now I'll press play, and I can see some things are obviously wrong with it. It's not perfect, but now I'll speed it up. I'll try to make it a little more dramatic. So I'll go into the translate X, the car to start back farther, so I'll pull it down, and now it starts back here, so it's speeding up, and already that's a bit more interesting. And I'll also add some wobble once it settles into the parking space, and I'll use the rotate X, and go into the rotate X, I'll add some keys, and now I'll adjust these keys to try to achieve the desired wobble. So I want it to wobble this way, so I'll pull them up, and then I want it to settle. What am I doing? Sorry. All right, I'm going to add another key to give it some ease. I will auto-tangent these, and I'll see what happens. All right. Again, not perfect, but not horrible, and that's the idea. That's the sort of thing that is helpful if you understand what the curves do. You can animate with the curves. Or if you already have animation, but it needs to be adjusted, if you understand why the animation is happening, because of what the curves are doing, it'll help you adjust the animation to achieve the desired visual result from the character. So that's it. And I would recommend doing these sort of practice drills if you need the practice, if you aren't totally familiar with what curve does what. This, I think, is a good way to learn, and can also be kind of fun. So I'd recommend that sort of thing. But that's it for this video.